How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to take a look at a first-person shooter, a multiplayer one. I'm not much for PvP games, but this one is really fun. It reminded me back in the day of the original Titanfall and the old days of Call of Duty, even though this one doesn't look much like Call of Duty. But yeah. Apologize for the hat. Let's talk about Splitgate too.
Opponent is taking B.
Guardian Angel. B secure.
You've got two zones.
So Splitgate 2. This is a really fast-paced game, and it has the portals, although you will not see me use the portals much in this game. I haven't gotten used to that. But other than that, I really love like the jetpack, the way that you can run around and run a gun. It's one of my favorite parts of this game. Now, this game is made with Unreal Engine 5. In fact, it's made with one of the latest iterations of Unreal before the one that was just released in Unreal Fest. It's made with Unreal Engine 5.5, at least up until the recording of this videos. I don't know if they will update in the future. And this game performs really well. This is one of those instances where you can see they're utilizing the latest engine, the latest iterations of the engine, and still keeping things performance friendly. One of the things that I didn't see is ray tracing, and a game like this doesn't need any ray tracing. But as you can see, this game works flawlessly. I'd run it in Ultra with like absolutely everything maxed out, and it works fine on my 3090. However, this is a first-person shooter. You don't run everything on Ultra, just certain things. So I'm playing at 4K, but I've toned down several things because it's unnecessary when you're playing a first-person shooter. You don't care about like those little tiny reflections and all that. When it comes to the art style, this is one that I'm biased towards because it's not that gritty, realistic art style that you get in games like Call of Duty or Battlefield. And that's why I say it's not so much like Call of Duty, because I think it's closer to Overwatch. And I know some people maybe don't agree with that, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. The reason why I think it looks closer to Overwatch than it is to Call of Duty is because the way that the layout is done for the environment, the way that the roughness is used, it's not with a lot of like dirtiness. The environments are really clean. Even when you are in kind of like the foresty-ish kind of level. Although since I'm not into Battle Royale, I spend most of my playing time inside of the other battle arenas that have domination. The portal effects can be as good, or depending on how you set it up. If you set it to the lowest setting, then you'll see something grainy on the other side. But I do like how the portal situation works, and it does work in a way where you can shoot to the other side. So it is better that this is one of the settings that you keep turned up if you want to be using the portal especially to take down people. So overall, the shooting mechanics are pretty fun to use, even though, as you can see from this gameplay, I am not the best at it, but it's something that anyone can jump. The matchmaking is good. It does match you with people of your level. So you don't have to worry that you're not going to be able to be up to the level of those around you, because the matchmaking, at least in my case, it did it pretty well. As you can see, my aiming is not that great, but I'm doing decent for the most part. So I highly recommend that you jump in and play this game, because at least give it a try. It's a free game. And we need more games like this that can compete with like the big guys like Call of Duty, Apex Legends, because honestly, Apex Legends never resonated with me. I tried it because some friends asked me to try it, but for some reason I was never into it. Another thing that I noticed that sometimes in some games it's overlooked, but is how readable the characters are on screen. We're going to take a look a little bit later down the video when we look at the model, but you can see that you can read characters pretty well. So this makes it a lot easier for the player to target the people that you need to target, and it doesn't confuse the player characters with the environments, which is something really important that you need in the case of a game like this. And with that being said, let's get into the model. All right, here in Blender, as always, you can see we got our character model looking pretty good. I got all the maps. So the maps that this contains is all the maps that we usually get for Unreal. We'll talk about those later in the texturing section, but you can see how good this guy looks here inside Blender. I'm actually using Eevee, not Cycles in this case, because I wanted the normal maps to come through, and you can see how detailed everything looks with the texture all around. This is from the Arrow faction. I also have the other ones here. Let me know which if you play Splitgate, let me know which faction you like the best. We'll take a look at all of them in the end. But yeah, I think these characters are very cool, very detailed, very readable from afar, which is what I talked about. And I think that's one of the things that makes them stand out. I do think it's funny they have shoes like sneakers. I wonder if at some point we'll have like sponsored and they'll make real sneakers for these guys that you can purchase. So let's look at the geometry. As you can see from the triangle count, I'm sorry, there's a thunderstorm going on. It's 85,000 polys. So it's not one of the highest characters, the highest poly characters that we've had in this channel, but you can see that the silhouette of this character is very good. So you can see that all around there are no jaggies that you can tell, even though the resolution is not super high. Although, as always, the resolution tends to be higher in the arms. We're going to talk about this topology in a second. But other than that, pretty cool detail all around. A lot of detail is relying on the normal map, which is a very good thing, very good way to optimize things around. Now I'm going to turn off the texture so we can see this character better. One of the things that's interesting about the design of these characters is how they do have like hard surface on them, but the full character is not hard surface. So what I mean is you got this chest plate that is hard surface, non-deformable, so a lot easier to rig. Same thing goes for these shoulder pads and the helmet. So you have like the part that deforms, but you also have this little wings here to the sides, which since they are completely hard surface, that's something that it's a cool detail to have, but you don't have to worry too much when you're doing the weight mapping and the rigging, because for the most part, you're using the topology of the character around this. Now, looking at the flow, again, just like some characters that we've seen here, the flow is perfect. You can see like perfect quads in many places all around here, except maybe in these parts right here, where you have like little like crumples. It's not fabric because this is kind of like a skin tight suit. But when you have skin tight suits, and I've seen this when people design skin tight suits, the more professional looking ones are the ones that do have a little bit of wrinkling. And if you can make that wrinkling with geometry, that's even better, because any skin tight suit that anyone wears, no matter how tight it is, there's always, also it doesn't matter how fit you are, there's always a little bit of wrinkling somewhere, and that is what gives it that realism, even though these characters are not fully realistic. I also like the jetpack. The jetpack for these characters is pretty cool, very minimalistic, if you want to call it that way, for jetpack. It's not that big jetpack with a bunch of like pipes and tubes and going all around. It's just very sleek, very sports-like jetpack. And you can see also the geometry around here, like all of this is geo. There is some detail that we'll see on the normal maps, but there is plenty of geometry. So if we get into the character a little bit further and we grab, let's just grab the whole thing and hide it, you can see that even though you have the jetpack on top of it, you do have geometry underneath, and there's texturing underneath as well. I imagine is due to the customization when you switch it around the various jetpacks. I haven't looked at all the skins, but I'm pretty sure there's like some skins that you can buy that will change your jetpack as well. And you can also get rid of these, but you can see that there's geometry underneath. So this isn't one of those cases where because they have a pad covering, they're not going to have any geometry underneath. And this has a lot to do with modularity. We haven't talked about modularity yet, I think, but when it comes to characters that are supposed to switch skins, armor, whatever you want to call it, sometimes it's not about, okay, I'm going to optimize and I'm going to get rid of all that geometry underneath because I have something covering it. In this case, you should not do that because you will be substituting that with several other pieces. And if you have a hole in there, that will make it much harder on you in the future when you, let's say you want to make a shoulder pad that is smaller, or you want to make something that's not symmetrical. So you have a shoulder pad on one side and not on the other. This is why sometimes you don't get rid of that geometry, even though it's hidden underneath. So even if we, let's say we grab the chest plate and hide it, you can see that there is something underneath. That is a suit underneath, unlike some other characters that we've seen in the channel. Now, if we grab the, let me grab the head, it's underneath this. And as you can see, if I hide the helmet, this mesh is completely welded. Although, let's see about this neck. If we hide it, then you can see that this mesh is still welded. And this is just a separate piece that if we hide it further, you can see that we start seeing inside of the geometry. So this is a welded mesh to a point that has this little like collar around it. That is what's covering this mesh. That is what is the kind of like the extra portion of it. So let's just hide that, and you can see that this is the full-blown welded mesh. So if we look at the hand topology, as we've talked about before, you can see that is basically cylinder except for the knuckle portion, which does have extra reinforcement right here that ends up in a triangle, which is pretty cool. And you can see that over here, how they are kind of like reducing the geometry by adding like these little triangles here. You don't have to reduce the whole geometry. Now, this is another good example because people usually ask in the comment sections, like what kind of topology, how many triangles is like the top for this kind of game. So you are starting to see with my videos what pattern you should follow. At least with this one, you have several characters on screen, but it's never as much as a big open world scenario. So you can get away with a lot, even though we've seen some open world characters that do have a lot of geometry. In this case, let's say you could get away with a lot of geometry for the characters, but you don't want to because this is what you see other players do. This is not you. This isn't a third-person shooter. This is a first-person shooter. So you are seeing other players and you need to see them with a good silhouette, well realized, but you don't need as much geometry. When it comes to first-person shooters, you want your game to run as well as it can, because in a competitive scenario, you cannot have players lagging all around. Nobody's going to want to play your game. And the first-person shooter PvP crowd is not as interested in looking at like super high-end graphics. They're interested in a game that looks well and it performs very, very well. Now let's look at the UVs. So this character has several materials on him, and I've broken it down by material so we can see it better here in the UVs. So let's start with the lower portion, because that's how they call it here in the material sections. They have like the legs portion, the torso, and then the arms. The torso includes the head usually. And what I did is switch it to the normal maps, because the normal maps, just like we saw in my last dissected video, it's a little bit easier to tell what's what when it comes to the UVs. But you can see this UV is very well organized. Now let's go into another part of this character, torso. And you can see how things are broken down here, especially with the helmet. The helmet looking pretty cool overall in here. And we can see everything broken here. When it comes to the hands and the arms, what's interesting, I always try to see how they unwrap things. And as you can see, they broke down the hands into several portions as opposed to just seeing them from one side and splitting them open, kind of like pelting them. The reason for that is because you do have plenty of geometry here that needs to be unwrapped in order to get all that detail. So in this case, what they did was they relay UVs on top of each other. I've mentioned in my other videos that this usually happens when you use a symmetry modifier like I used to in 3D Studio Max. I would just create one arm and then just use the symmetry modifier, and the other arm will come through, and then I'll just tell the program to target weld things in the middle. However, because we're selecting things here, it might just be how the unwrapping went, where you just position things on top of each other. And because they're symmetrical when it comes to the textures, there is no big deal. Now for that thing that I mentioned in the beginning, that is something new that we haven't seen in the channel. For this video, I got what you see in first person. So if I hide this and I show this part, you can see that this is what you see in game when it comes to a first person shooter. This is your character, not the other model. The other model is for the other player characters. What you see is the arms. And the reason for that is because in a competitive shooter, you are not worrying about looking at your feet, looking at the rest of your body. You are worried about shooting other people, not getting shot. And you can see that they terminated the arms right here, even though when we looked at the character model, the arms went all the way into the torso geometry of the character. The UVs for these are exactly the same as the UVs that we've seen for everything. As you can see, same normal map, same UVs all around, just without the other geometry. So if you have any more questions about these first person character models, let me know in the comment section down below. And let's go into the other faction characters, which I find the Meridian and the Arrow are pretty close to me in design wise. So I'm just gonna put them in the texture and get rid of this so you can see it without the armature. You can see that these guys are, I do like the Meridian, like the submachine gun and stuff. This part of the jetpack is pretty awesome. UVs and geometry wise, these are similar to the other characters, so we're not gonna get deep into this, but I just want to show you the texture for these and how detailed it is, how you can tell like all the difference between the materials that makes their suit, and like this is some kind of fabric, and then this is kind of like more of a leathery kind of texture. The roughness that you see here is not the actual roughness of the character, because I cannot get the ORM maps to work correctly in Blender. That's something that we'll have to see in Unreal. Are you interested in seeing these characters in Unreal Engine? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll make a separate video like I did with Marvel's Rivals, so you can take a look at how these shaders are built and how these maps with the ORM maps works when it comes to these types of character. But you can see the whole detail of the fabric right here, very well defined. All the little crevices and cracks that the top of the helmet has. Of course, this is kind of like a painted metal helmet, so you can see the little scratches that go on around here, and these floating pieces that I think are pretty cool. The rubberized all around, kind of like a motorcycle kind of suit, and this little bits of the character that do remind me of those suits in the first Crisis games. If you've heard about that, like Can It Run Crisis, that was a pretty cool game back in the day, and the characters had kind of like this striped and muscular build on them. But if we get that out and we bring one of the SBKs that I have right here, you can see that there's quite a bit of a difference in the design of the characters from the Meridian and the Arrow. I would say this is kind of like the heavy sort of guy. Even though health-wise, I think they're all the same. I didn't see any difference when it comes to the HP of each character. The weapons for these factions do hit a little bit harder and don't fire as fast, but you can see like this character right here does look like, you know, one of the shock troopers. It's very well armored all around. The other ones look a little bit more like light armor than this one, but you can see that this one does have pretty cool details all around when it comes to like the normal maps and everything, because we do have normal maps on this. All these little details and crevices that you're seeing right here are only made because of those normal maps. And normal maps don't just help you to define extra detail like the rivets right here on the suits, but they also help you define different types of materials that go around in the character. You can see the difference between this kind of like padded fabric right here and this part that is more rubberized, and then we have this protection on the biceps that this looks like it should go on the knees, but it's on the bicep. It looks like a suit that is high tech, but it's also kind of like jerry rig. Pretty cool design overall. I like these guys the most, and since their weapons do hit harder, I do like them because as you can see, I don't aim pretty well. But you can take one character down with a couple of shots of one of this faction's weapons. Do you want to see more about Splitgate? Do you want to see the weapons? Because I do got the weapons for this. Let me know in the comments section down below. Remember to like, subscribe, and all that. More socials are downstairs in the description box. There's a playlist, because again, I always talk about topics that I've talked in the past. I just gone in depth in another videos. And I don't like to repeat stuff because people can get tired of that. So if you saw some concepts here that you didn't understand, highly recommend that you watch the playlist since the beginning so you can grasp all the little concepts that I've been talking about through my whole series about dissecting AAA assets here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Occupy the zone and defend it to score.
Zone active.